So today we are talking about love through unlimited forgiveness. And so I want us to start, if we will, as a collective consciousness of Unity of Springfield, to say this together. Our love light is seen in 2016. Okay, now we're going to say it like we mean it, okay? So like with some passion and, yes, this is what we're doing, okay, together. Our love light is seen in 2016. Yes, I believe that one. Okay, and together, let's say this. I am a human being, love. And so it is, and so it shall be. So just to bring you up to today, we are going to be integrating one of the 12 powers in each month of this year. For this month, I do get to talk about the power of love almost all month, which I love because I think it is the foundation of everything else in our lives. And then, we'll be in book series and things like that, but I will integrate the power into whatever we're doing. This is based on the book, The 12 Powers of Man by our co-founder, Charles Fillmore. So we talked the first week about love through self-love and how important it is for us to really get connected with ourselves and begin to love ourselves and move into our self-worth and our value as a human being. And really today is about that too, as we're going to talk some about self-forgiveness. And then we talked about love through service. And I have to tell you that last week I was just tickled at how many of you immediately stepped up in service, and thank you for that. And I really, again, I want to encourage us all to recognize this ministry is ours. It's not mine, it's not the staff's, it's not the board. This is our ministry, and if we want to take it to that next place, then we all have to be a part of this in some way. So thank you for considering ways that you can serve in the ministry to support our mission, to really encourage and inspire spiritual and personal growth, not just here in us, but everywhere that we are, everywhere that we go. And so today, as I said, is love through forgiveness. Now, forgiveness is always an interesting topic, and it's a topic that is so important, and one that, it's important for us to talk about at least a couple of times a year. One of the things we don't realize is that when we're carrying resentment and blame and anger, when we're carrying feelings of shame and guilt, that we are literally blocking our light. We are literally blocking the flow of good in our lives. And how many of us want to block the flow? No hands up. Okay, we don't want to block that flow. So it's important that we look at this topic of forgiveness. Now, what I what I did actually, is I went to the book Life is for Loving by the late Reverend Eric Butterworth. I'm going to tell you that anything you read by Eric Butterworth is going to be powerful. One of the things that I love about Eric Butterworth is that he does not cut us any slack. Eric gets to the point, and he tells it like it is. And so today, I'm going to be sharing with you a lot of what Reverend Eric Butterworth talks about. And I hope that it's going to rattle your cages. I hope that you're going to go, oh, how can that be? I hope it's going to stir something up in every single one of us, because what he has to say is so incredibly powerful. So we're going to first start with what he says about love. He says there is a creative intention of love within us at all times. We are always in love. We are always loved, and we always have enough love within us to deal with any and all the relationships and experiences in the world. Did you know that? We have enough love to be able to come from love in a very high way to handle all the relationships and all the experiences in our life and in the world around us. And here's the thing, we may know that intellectually, but today I really want to help us take it from the head to the heart into a deeper, grander, greater realization of what this looks like and what this means. Jesus, as the expression of love, was about forgiveness. That was one of the main messages that he shared with us, was that of forgiveness. And so Eric says, he tries to get us to understand the love that we are. He tries to get us to understand our divinity, our who and what we really are. So he says, It may be said that God is life, God is intelligence, God is power, God is love. But again, all this is simply abstract generalization unless and until we can say, and I'm going to invite us to say this together, whatever else God is me. Not that I am all of God, but that I am that something that I call God as it expressing itself as me. God is life, and I am that life, manifesting as my body temple. God is intelligence, and I am that intelligence in the form of the wisdom of my mind. God is power, and I am that power in the form of my strength and creativity to build and shape. God is love, and I am that love, expressing in and through as my loving heart. And yes, that is absolutely true. And it's so important for us to own this, for us to receive the gift that has already been given to us. And that is this truth right here. And so he goes on to say that the answer is not love. That's not the great need of life. What it is loving. It's one thing to know that we are made of love. It is another thing to turn that into a verb, into action. That what is important in our personal worlds, what is important in the world as a whole, is that we express this love in the highest possible way that we can. So first we're going to talk about self-forgiveness, self-love. So here's what Eric says. He says, God is love, even when we are filled with hatred and when we are angry and bitter. But the very moment that we release our bitterness, to rise above our guilt, and stop feeling sorry for ourselves, is the moment that we let God, who has always loved us with an everlasting love, to be God in us and to be love in us. And what this is reminding us, my friends, is that God never withholds. Love cannot withhold. Love is ever giving of itself. And I love because he shares a couple of examples of how it might look that we would cut this off. So he said, if we went over and we turned the light switch off, that the electricity would not withhold because it was mad that we shut that off. The moment that we put that switch back up, the electricity is just right there, and it's giving its all to whatever it is that we're using the electricity for. He also uses the example of if you took a rubber band and you placed it around your index finger, that it would begin to get red, it would begin to start throbbing, it would begin to kind of get blue, and if you left it on too long, it could actually really cause major damage, even possibly losing that part of your finger. Now, he reminds us that life itself, it's not the wrath of the life in the body that is causing that. It's the rubber band that we have put around it. And the moment that we take the rubber band off, guess what? The life that's in the body, just rushes right into it, doing its healing work. And that's how it is with love itself. The only reason that we don't feel love within ourselves is because we have placed a block in the way of that. And today, a big part of this is really about opening ourselves up to recognizing and feeling and knowing that we live and move and have our being in the most divine and pure love, that we are always of. There's nothing in the realm of love that sees anything but perfection, that sees anything but love. It cannot see anything. It cannot see shame and blame and guilt. Those are rubber bands that we're putting around our experience. Love is always giving. And it's so very important for us to get. Now, self-love, I think, is one of the hardest things. Self-forgiveness, I should say. It's one of the hardest things for us to do. But as we fill ourselves, and here's the thing about it, is I find many times that we kind of look to the outer world to heal us. And so how I mean that is, and I do think it's highly important that if you've caused harm to someone, that you make an amend. I think that's highly important. But I'm going to tell you something else. That does not heal you. What heals you is when you go within and you fill this vessel and you allow the love to rise from within you with love. That you take the time to just feel the presence of love that is not withholding anything. Then you recognize that you are innocence. You are love. And you let this be filled, and nothing unlike itself can remain inside of you. It's not even something that you have to work hard at. It's something that you make a commitment to, that you're going to fill this vessel. And again, you're going to allow it to rise up from within you as a fountain of love. And remember who you are. And remember that you are that love expressing. And the thing about this, and I always say this, but I love how it works, that as we do this and as we become this pure expression of love, everything changes in the world around us. And even if you feel that you have harmed someone and they are not able to forgive you, it's going to be okay with you, because all you're going to be doing is loving them. That's all you're going to be doing is loving them. Just loving them. And it is their journey to fill their own vessel. But that's how we heal it. We heal it with the love that we already are. The love that is already all around us and within us. And, this is our greater truth. So let's talk now about forgiveness of others, because this is a big one for us too, is really moving into forgiveness of others. Jesus combined the forgiveness of others with the forgiveness of God. And I'm going to talk more about that in a few minutes to explain what that might look like. So Eric Butterworth says that in our humanness, when we feel like somebody has really wronged us, somebody has done something to damage our experience, that there's nothing logical in the human consciousness about this power of forgiveness, as Peter reveals as he asked Jesus, how many times should I forgive? 7 times? And, essentially he's saying, how much can a person take? You can't just keep on going on forgiving and forgiving and forgiving. And Jesus says to him, 7 times, but 7 times, 77 times. He's saying, as much as it takes, as long as it takes, as much effort as it takes, you keep on with this process of filling yourself with love. And this evidently, obviously, is what forgiveness of others is about as well. He says, we may feel that forgiving persons who have despitefully used us is too much to expect of us, and that we have a good reason for turning off the light of love and a perfect right to our indignation. Any of us ever been there? Yeah. And boy, we can get in our little place, can't we? And we can tell all kinds of people about how wrong I have been wronged, and how my life is the way it is because of somebody else. And we can stay in that victim consciousness. And we're going to stay here. We're going to stay right here. We are not empowered in this place, are we? At all. We are so disempowered. And we are closed. Can you see that I'm pretty closed here? Because by golly. And so what he says is, this is all very well in the logic of the human mind, but it absolutely omits principle. We cannot get out of the realm of principle. No matter how hard you try, you cannot get out of the realm of principle. And what is the greater truth? So he goes on to say, man is a spiritual being created in and of love with the same mind that was in Christ Jesus. Man is divine as Jesus was divine, but the power and privilege that goes with our divinity is only ours when we act the part. And he goes on to say the difference between Jesus and us is not that he was created under some special dispensation, but that he acted constantly at the level of his divinity, while we act much of the time at the level of our humanity. So true, isn't it? Until we know better. And then we can start acting at the level of our divinity. He goes on to say that this approach may seem Pollyannish and that there's the absolutists that say there absolutely is no evil in the world and what he says to that, but this can be terribly misleading because we see that evil acts occur in our world. There are bad things that happen around us, and it would be burying our head in the sand to say, that, and okay, so let me tell you what he says evil is, because I love his how he defines it. He says evil is the concealment of good caused by frustration of the potentiality for good in many persons. There is a lot of good being concealed and a lot of God's love being restricted, resulting in an awful lot of perversity and inhumanity to man. So from that perception, there's a lot of evil that goes on in our world. But he goes on to say, not because evil is a power in and of itself. It's simply because of our misalignment. It's because, not just misalignment, sometimes we are totally out of alignment with our greater reality and our greater truth. And what we can see is that for people who act out in these horrible ways, they are not in alignment with that greater truth at all. They are totally out of, they're in misalignment with that. So he says that if we are in our human consciousness judging by appearances, then it's not easy to forgive. And that perhaps on this level, when we are trying to do this just in our humanness, when we are trying to forgive in this place of our mind, trying to make sense of it, then it can seem, it may be impossible for us. So he says the first step then is to turn the other cheek. How many of us have heard that scripture, turn the other cheek? That's from John 7:24. And what he says is to turn to the other side of our nature, from the human to the divine, and thus not to judge according to appearances, but judge with right judgment. We're turning the other cheek. We're going back to what we talk about all the time here. We're going back to that inner place. We're in the world, but we're not going to be of the world. When these things come up, we're not going to try and fix them out here, and we're not going to go tell everybody about how wronged we've been, and instead we're going to stop and remember, wait a second. There's something greater here that I'm not even tapping into. And not only is it here, it's me. It's who and what I really am. And so I'm going to stop and I'm going to breathe and I'm going to open myself up to that. I'm going to allow that to be what fills my mind, that which guides my words and guides my actions. I'm going to that because that's when I am my greatest expression of love and light. That's when we're all the greatest expression of love and light. The law is forgive and you will be forgiven. I'm going back to that now. And it's interesting when you look at that because it sounds like a God outside of us is going to forgive us. But I want to explain it with a story. And this is a story actually that I read years ago. I love it. And it's from the book The Little Soul and the Sun by Neil Donald Walsh. This story touched me so much, and it really helped me with some stuff that I was experiencing at that time. And so the story is essentially that there's this little soul, and this little soul is with all the other bright lights and little souls, and the soul realizes that, I am the light, and yet it says to God, I want to experience everything, and God's like, you are experiencing everything. There's only love, and there's only light. No, I want to go to earth, and I want to experience the things that I see people experiencing. And so it's kind of thought about, and so it's decided that the little soul wants to experience forgiveness. And God's little soul is totally excited about the fact that it's going to get to experience forgiveness. And so the thing is that the little soul needs someone to help him experience forgiveness. So this other really friendly soul comes up to the little soul and says, I will help you. I will help you to experience forgiveness on earth. And the little soul says, thank you so much, but how are you going to do that? And the friendly soul says, well, essentially, I am going to have to really lower my vibration so much. And I'm going to show up as something really dark in your experience. And so he goes on to say, in the moment that I strike you and smite you, In the moment that I do the worst to you that you could possibly imagine, in that very moment, yes, said the little soul, yes. The friendly soul became quieter still. In that moment, remember who I really am. And the little soul said, oh, I will. I promise I will always remember you as I see you right here, right now. Good, said the friendly soul, because you see, I will have been pretending so hard, I will have forgotten myself. And if you do not remember me as I really am, I may not be able to remember for a very long time. And if I forget who I am, then you may even forget who you are, and we will both be lost. Then we will need another soul to come along and remind us both of who we are. And so this forgive and you are forgiven is that when we are in this place where we have really judged somebody harshly, and this is not to say we're not condoning behavior and we're not allowing behavior that is harmful. That's not what this is about. It's about what we're carrying from this, whatever experiences that we've had. And so in the moment that we choose that, yes, I'm going to be this vessel of love, and I'm going to remember who you are. I am going to work to remember who you are, because that's who I am. That's what I'm here for. I am here to be the presence of love. And in remembering who you are, in that act of what we would call forgiveness, I'm going to help you to remember who you are. And isn't it true that when we get caught up in this anger and this blame and this resentment and you are who caused this and you're the reason that my life is the way that it is, isn't it true that then we just stay in this darkness? We stay in this place of, we're not empowered at all in that place. In fact, like I know in my experience that I've seen people, I've worked with people who have been really carrying so much anger and blame about their life and about their past, and their countenance shows it. You know, they're slower, their face, their emotions, everything is just, it's depressed when we're there. But when we start to fill this with love and start to remember who we are, and in that we start to remember who everybody else is, then what happens is that our countenance changes. And again, everything in our life changes from that. Everything changes from that. So I also want to share with you that, you know, sometimes we do in our humanness, we think, it was so awful, I can't forgive that. I cannot do it. And so I want to tell you, first of all, you're fighting for your limitations. And I want to tell you, secondly, yes, you can. You can. You can. You can forgive it. And in the greater reality, and this is the truth that sometimes can really go, ah, there is nothing to forgive. Because as we are being the fullest expression of love, in love, there is no blame, there is no anger, there is no resentment. There is only love. And that's why there is nothing actually to forgive. And so, if you're thinking again, that just can't be, I want to tell you a little story about Malala. I don't know her last name. Anyway, Malala, by the age of 16, she was really speaking out for girls' rights to have an education in a society that obviously did not promote that at all. And her family was very, very supportive of this. And so she spoke out about this. And at the age of 16, the Taliban boarded her school bus and they shot her in the head, and actually ended up shooting two of her friends, and miraculously they all survived. And so Malala now, she actually won the Nobel Peace Prize, and she was on one of Oprah's Super Soul Sundays. I was so touched by this young lady's commitment to the truth of her being, and that is that there is only love. And as she shared, she said, you know, even if I had a gun at that moment, I would not have shot him, because that would have been to harm another person. And she said, and Oprah asked her, she said, well, were you ever angry? And she said, no. And Oprah's like, Really? You were never angry? And she said, no. And she said, did you feel the need to forgive them? And she said, no, there was nothing to forgive them for, because she was in this place of pure love. And she said even her mother had such compassion for the parents of these young boys that were brainwashed into this, and had such compassion that their sons committed such an atrocious kind of a thing. And so I look at this, and she's an example of this. She's a human being who is really connected with her spirit, with her divine self. And she is now the voice for all of us to be able to say there is no need for forgiveness. In fact, I want to tell you something else. When you say, I forgive you because I'm so powerful and I now release you, I forgive you, it's rather arrogant, my friends. It's rather arrogant. Now, if somebody needs to hear that from you, by all means, share whatever. Sometimes I've just said, it's all love. It's good. It's fine. No worries. But when we can move to that place, this year I'm calling us higher. And I'm calling us to those places where that we don't walk out of here and just go back into our lives as they were, because nothing's going to change. And I believe that we're here because we want to change. We want to live our best life. We want to be the greatest, most purest expression of God, of love that we can possibly be. But it's going to take effort on our part. And it's going to take waking up. It's going to take diving in maybe to some books that speak on forgiveness. And Eric Butterworth, you can never go wrong with Eric Butterworth, ever, ever, ever. But there's so many more. It's going to take listening to music that uplifts you and blesses you and nurtures you. It's going to take watching things on television that expand you and not diminish you. It's going to take being with like-minded people and being able to get good, positive, reinforcing feedback from people. Having support to say, yes, I know you can do it. I'm going to be here with you. We're going to work through this, until you find that place where you can bless this entire situation. And that's what I want to end with, is what Jesus said in Matthew. He said, you have heard it has been said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, bless them and pray for them, which spitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rains on the just and on the unjust. So my call to you today is to really take this in your heart. Get out of your head and move this into your heart. Kind of check in. Are there areas where I'm holding, shame and guilt about things that I have done? You get real in your heart and say, am I still operating out of thinking that somebody has had so much power in my life that they have diminished my life experience today? And then the next step, my friends, is to turn the other cheek and to turn to your divine self and to just open yourself up. And Jay, just fill me, flow out from me. And let me feel and remember who I am, what I live and move and have my being in, that I can then look at every other person that I see in my experience and remember who they are. And that's how we change our world. But it's also how we change the world. Namaste. Namaste. Thank you.